Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 1, verses 1 through 27. Now, it begins with after the death of Saul. This is a line of demarcation. You know, the book of Joshua began with after the death of Moses. The book of Judges begins with after the death of Joshua. And so this is marking that this is a big change coming. And David has returned from fighting and slaying the Amalekites. Remember, those are those raiders, those human slavers or traffickers, right? And so on the third day, which is a biblical phrase we should hold on to, a man shows up, his clothes are torn, he's got dust on his head. He comes before David and bows down like he's king. And he says, I just came from the battlefield. Saul is dead. And David's like, well, what happened? And he says, well, by chance, I just happened to be at Mount Gilboa, which is where the Israelite army had gathered. And then that's where they retreated to. And I saw that Saul had been wounded, but he was lingering. And he asked me to cut him down. So I did. And because I was right there, I took his crown and his arm bracer and so when David and his men hear this, they rip their clothes. They weep and mourn and fast for Saul and Jonathan because they revered them, right? And so David asked, well, who are you? Where are you from? How is it that you came to be here? And he says, well, I'm kind of a stranger. I'm an Amalekite. Well, that should set off buzzers for us. It certainly did for David. I mean, the Amalekite are people who attack stragglers, who prey on the weak and the defenseless, right? And this guy thinks that David is like him, that he has a heart filled with bitterness and hatred, and that David thinks that way about Saul. The other part of this is, he's got the crown and the bracer. He took it sort of as a trophy, but where's he going to get the most money for that? And so he's trying to pawn it with David. He thinks he's going to get a reward after he stripped the dead body of Saul. And David says, your own mouth has testified against you, right? You slayed the one the Lord has anointed, the one the Lord called to this office. And we know that he's not telling the truth because we know that Saul fell on his own sword. So this guy is lying in order to sell what he has stripped off a corpse for, right? And I want us to think about in our own lives, in the life of the church, do we ever think that we should attack and tear down a fellow Christian that perhaps we don't agree with, that it's our job to tear them down? And do we ever think that we should attack and tear down the ones that the Lord has called to ministry, the pastors? There are times when they forfeit their position. I would agree to that. But there's other times when they're doing their tasks to the best of their abilities and they get attacked by the very people they're trying to lead. We should be praying very earnestly about that because it's not our decision. That's one of the things that David said. It's not my place. Now, after this, David gives a eulogy, how the mighty have fallen. We hear that phrase, and here's where it comes from. It comes from David's eulogy over Saul. And he says to the Philistines, you should not be celebrating, you uncircumcised wicked fellows, because it's the Lord who brought this about. But we weep over the one that God has blessed. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.